Hello and welcome, everyone. We got Billy Melvin here with us today, and he's part of the class of 2023 for the Alabama Auto Racing Pioneers Hall of Fame. We're going to learn more about him today. We're going to learn more about his personal life, his racing life, and what it means for him to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. So, Billy, welcome, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We're going to start out with the earlier part of your life and what made you begin racing and loving race cars, and how'd racing become a part of your life?
Well, when I was a kid, a little boy, my dad had a race car, and to be honest, I was really too young to remember it. But we went to the races my whole life. We went to the fairgrounds every Friday night and mostly Sayre on Saturday nights for the bigger part of my life until I become a teenager. Started playing ball and sports, and then I got away from it for a little while. But my sister went every week. My sister Patty, she went every week to the races to see Bobby Massey. Bobby and Jimmy Massey grew up down the street from me, and they rode to high school with my sister. She had a car. She's the only one who had a car, and they would ride with her, and we would, as I grew up, they were in my life, but they were older. I was 10 years younger than my sister, so she was sort of the built-in babysitter. And so she went every week, and she kept after me to come to the racetrack and hang out and watch the races with her, sit in the stands. And this was probably a year. Well, she went all the time, but about a year after I got out of high school, I met my wife, Beth, and I graduated in 85. And I met her in the summer of 85. So she and I would go out to the races. We would hang out, watch the race with my sister. And my sister went with the lady she worked with named Lynn Cross, and she had her husband's name was Charlie Cross. And so Charlie and I become good friends. And after we sat there for a while, I said to him, I think I could do this. I want to get me a car. And he said, well, if you do, I'll help you with it. So probably a year later, maybe not that long, I was looking around. I bought an old cheap car, and that was, we started, but we didn't have anything.
Right.
We started with nothing.
Was Charlie mechanically inclined?
He knew a little bit.
Okay.
And I knew enough to be dangerous, but I didn't know anything about racing. I had never been in the pits except for after the races.
Wow.
It's not like I was on a crew or knew anything, and he hadn't either. He's just a fan.
Right.
So basically, he had two fans sitting in the stands, said, I think I'll get a car. And
Wow.
This is where we started. But our ace in the hole was the Masseys. Bobby was racing, and Jimmy had been around racing. They'd been around it their whole lives. And if I had any questions, I knew that I could go up there and get good advice. I knew they would steer me straight. And so I got an old car, and we went to the racetrack 3 or 4 times, but to be honest, it really mechanically wasn't a good race car. Mm-hmm. And we kept falling out of races for one reason or the other. And so then they changed the rules. But my first race I ever run, my sister dated a guy named Larry Robbins. And he had a car, a sportsman car, and they raced out of a shop in downtown Adamsville. And this shop had a transmission. Chris Mullinax had a transmission in the shop.
I remember that.
And Danny Parsons owned the building, and Steve Hall raced out of that shop. Okay. The Dirty 30.
Yep.
And so Larry had a car there.
Mm-hmm.
And I started hanging out around that shop. And I learned a lot from Larry. Larry had helped Red Farmer forever. And so Larry knew how to race. He just didn't have nothing to race with, but he knew how.
Right.
And so he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about mechanicking skills, because not that I was a terrible mechanic, but I wasn't a car mechanic at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had no tools. So I started figuring out that I needed a decent tool set. So I'd go to Bessemer Flea Market on Sundays and buy a few tools. And I bought a 2-pound hammer. I still have my hammer. It's still in the box. and I watch it and I guard it. And people know not to fool with that hammer. But I keep that as a reminder of where I started.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Larry didn't have a trailer. And the first thing I bought to race with was a trailer. Because I knew if I ever got a car, I had to have a way to haul it.
Right.
And I had looked at 2 or 3 cars, and I had no way to get it home. So I went and I actually built a trailer. We rounded up some axles, whatever. We built a trailer. And so I hauled Larry's car to Sayre. That's the first pit pass I ever bought, was taking his car into the racetrack. And I ran around and I learned a little bit, not much, but I learned a little bit. And so one night he was working and he said, he called somebody. I don't know how he got in touch with us because cell phones didn't exist, but he had to work late. And so I wound up having to drive his car because that's all that was left. But
Wow.
I'd bought myself a helmet and a fire suit because I had bought an old car, like I said, a few weeks before. And it didn't have an engine, but anyway. So I get in this car and I run the race. I stayed on the lead lap. I didn't hit nothing. And he come over after the race and he said, "You did a good job." He said, a really good job not to have ever driven a race car. And I thought, well, I don't think I want to do this. It was hot and it was tiring and it really wasn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. It was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
Right.
Anyway, I had a car and a trailer, no engine, and Larry needed me to pull his car to the racetrack. So that was the first time I'd bought a pit pass. I would always sit in the stand. And so I hauled the car in. Well, actually, I hauled it about 3 or 4 times, but about the 3rd or 4th time I hauled it, he had to work late. And he didn't show up. I mean, it's getting race time. And if I had known he wasn't going to show up, I would have probably practiced a little bit.
Yeah, right.
So I've got a fire suit and a helmet, and he's not there. And it's getting race time. And I'm thinking, well, do I race this car or not? I couldn't decide because I couldn't communicate with him.
Sure, yeah.
So I just drove it.
Wow.
I got in it and I drove it, and I didn't hit nothing, and I stayed on the lead lap. But as it turns out, he had got there late and went in the stands to sit with my sister. And he come down after the race. He said, well, "You did a really good job." He said, you were consistent and you run pretty fast. You were within a couple of tenths of the leader. And I said, "Well, thanks." And I said, "I don't know about this racing thing. It's a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. Driving is a lot harder. It's hot. It's really not a lot of fun once you're in there. But
especially when you're out there just making laps and you're not racing somebody and trying to work them and things of that nature." So
right, I was just trying not to hit the wall and go as straight as I could. I'd watched race my whole life. I had a little bit of a clue of how to do it, and I drove like an idiot on the street. So I had that part.
You had the control down, correct?
Right. Yeah. I just things come at you a lot faster out there. You think you're going fast on the interstate, but you're not.
Yeah, that's right.
But so anyway, I finally got my old car together and we carried it out there, and we carried it about 3 or 4 times, and it had mechanical issues every time. At the end of the day, I just wasn't a very good mechanic.
Right.
And neither was Charlie, as it turned out. But we had a good time, and we learned a lot. The first time I carried the race car to the track, Larry's there, and he says, "What's the rollout?" And I said, What's rollout? And I had a right side tire on the left and a left side tire on the right because I just bolted them on. I had no idea. So he showed me about rollout a little bit, and I raced that car, as I said, 3 or 4 times, and we finally finished the race. And we finished 3rd or 4th, I can't remember, but we were really excited to be running as well as we did.
Yeah.
So they changed the rules up a little bit, and we had a really long car. The wheelbase on it was long, and of course, I always went to the masses for advice, and I was talking to Jimmy. Jimmy said, "You need a shorter car." So they had a car that Bobby Hicks had raced in the Enduros. And I bought that car. And I took it, and I ran a race or two with it in like 89. But in 90, I ran the whole season at Sayre. My first year to really race was 1990.
Okay.
I ran the whole season at Sayre. I won a couple of heat races, and I finished in the top 3 2 or 3 times. I never really was a threat to win, but I got better each week, and I learned a lot.
Right.
And about halfway through that year, I don't know, I guess Jimmy Wesson felt sorry for me or whatever. I don't know. But he came over and he said, "You need some help?" And I was by myself. My friend Charlie had developed a malignant brain tumor. And obviously his racing days were pretty much over.
Now, how long did Charlie help you? How many years was that?
He passed away in about 1994.
So soon after you guys began racing, he developed his...
And he could come to the racetrack some.
Right.
He couldn't drive.
Yeah.
I'd go pick him up. I just, away from racing, I went and picked him up a couple of days a week. And
now, how old was he when he passed away, you think?
Early 40s.
Wow. Yeah.
He was a very young man.
Yeah, very young.
He might have been mid 40s.
Wow.
But he was a great guy.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we went to racing with Jimmy Wesson some. He started coming out to the racetrack and helping. And he taught me how to race.
How many people you think Jimmy's helped in his lifetime race?
I don't know. It's a bunch.
It's a bunch, isn't it?
But I can tell you this, every car he's ever worked on went faster.
Wow.
Every single one of them. He made them better. But you know, Jimmy helped a lot of people that just didn't have a clue like me.
Yeah, he's a really good friend to the racer, no doubt about it.
And he still does that to this day.
Yep.
If he sees you struggling, he will come over there and take the time to help you.
Yeah.
At least show you what to do.
That's right. Yeah.
And so he started helping me, and he'd come to the racetrack, and so he had 2 cars at the fairgrounds. And so I started going to the fairgrounds, helping him with his cars. And he was coming to Sayre to help me with mine. Well, about midway through 91, he decided to quit racing 2 cars and he was going to sell one. Well, I bought one. And that turned everything around. I finally had a pretty good race car.
Yeah. And
we won a lot of races. And, well, I should say a lot of races. And we finished out that year, we won most all of them. So 92, I decided I'd like to go to the fairgrounds. And his advice to me was, you don't hit nothing easy at the fairgrounds. You either cut it off or replace it. There ain't no straightening it out there. I said, well, but I want to go.
Yeah.
And so we went out there, and I ran pretty good. I ran second the first time we ever ran a race there. And of course, you contribute all that to him.
Right.
And before the season was over, I won Rookie of the Year. I was second in points, won 5 or 6, 7 features. I don't know. And then 93 rolled around, and we were loaded for bear. We won a lot of races, not just at Sayre, but Huntsville, and we won a few up there, and we won some at Montgomery. We won Birmingham. We won a bunch of races at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And we sort of won everywhere we went. But in the middle of 93, I lost my job, and I had to make a decision. Do I get another job, or I sort of doing a lot of side work in the heat and air business, and I had a name picked out and I had a business license. So I went into heat and air business full time.
And how old are you at this point?
I don't know. I guess 25, 6, maybe 27. I was young.
Very young.
I just can't keep up with that stuff too much. I don't think about it.
I understand. Sure.
But when I opened that business, it slowed me down a little bit. And to be honest, I just didn't have didn't have the money to do what I needed to do. I was scared to spend anything. If I made $1, I put it up.
Right.
And so Ray Putnam come out of the stands one night. I won a bunch of races. If I went 2 weeks without winning a race, generally there was something wrong. Not bragging, but we had it figured out.
Right.
And Ray said, "What's the matter? You're not running very good." He said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I've run these right side tires. This will be the 4th race, and the left's got 6 races on them."
Wow.
And I said, "We're just getting beat on tires, but I can't afford to buy them." I said, "But I'm going to get me 2 next week." So I go to the tire truck next week, and Greg Nick's doing tires, and he said, I said, "I want to get 2 tires." He said, "Well, go ahead and pick you out 4. And I said, "Okay, well, I don't need but 2. I can't do 4.
Yeah.
He said, "No, they're paid for. Just get you 4. And I said, "Well, who paid for them?" And he wouldn't tell me.
Really?
And I was in a hurry. You know how you work yourself to death. And
yeah,
we had a couple of crew members, and Fish was with me at that time. And Fish went to a lot of races with me, and he helped me for a long time. He was a great guy. So we mount the tires up. We get lucky. We win the race. And Putnam comes back down there. I said, "You buy me some tires?" He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." He had a straight face. He could play poker. And so I didn't know who bought me tires. I thought it might have been my dad. Maybe he bought me 4 tires. I just didn't know. So anyway, we went back and we started running up front again. And every time I went to the tire truck, not every time, but about every other time, I'd have a set of tires. And as it turns out, Ray Putnam was buying me some tires.
Wow.
He said, "You put on a hell of a show."
Yeah.
He said, "You start at the back." He said, "I don't care where they put you." He said, "We sit in the stands," and he said, "It makes our day if they make you start dead last."
And how'd that make you feel coming from somebody like Ray Putnam? That's a very big compliment because he was a true racer.
You know, it's funny. I didn't know who he was.
Okay.
I'd seen him race when I was a kid. I mean, I watched all the greats.
Sure.
You know, and Ray and Alton Jones, and I know everybody knows Bobby Donnie and Red, but
sure,
there was a lot of guys out there that if they was on even terms, I promise you, could race with anybody in this country.
That's right. I agree.
And Ray was one of them.
Absolutely.
And, so anyway, later on.
So he never asked to put his company name on the car, no recognition.
He wouldn't even tell me that he was buying them.
Wow. Isn't that something?
And he never did tell me he was buying them.
Really?
But
so how did you figure it out?
Somebody told me.
Okay.
I think it might have been Tim Ramsey. It was helping Ray at the time.
Okay.
That he said, "Ray's, he's been there."
Right.
And
yes,
he's seen the struggle, and
yeah,
and he knows where you're at. And he said he just wants to help you.
Wow.
And so later on, it was a couple of years later that I found out that Ray is helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to him and I said, "I appreciate your help." He said, "Nah, I didn't help you." I said, "Yeah, you did. If it hadn't been for you, you helped us win a lot more races than we would have won."
Yeah.
He said, "How many tires do you buy?" And I said, "Well, I run the rights about at least 2 races, and I run the lefts 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did back then. But we had a tire that you could repeat with.
Right. Yeah.
And we soaked it every week, but it worked, and it wasn't as good as a new one, but it was still competitive. I think there was like 30 races, and we won about 17 or 18 of them, but we run in the top 3 about 28 times that year.
Wow.
A lot of nights had double features.
Right.
And so, you know, in the street stocks, I don't care who's racing, the street stocks race. That's just
best racing is.
Yeah. I tell you, that's really and truly what's wrong with racing today. They need to get back to that.
That's correct. I agree.
Technology is killer racing.
So how long did Ray help you for long?
He helped me. Without my knowledge, he helped me a long time.
Wow.
Probably until he got too sick to go to the races.
And that was a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
He helped me for a long time. And he was an ambassador to the sport, and he was great.
Yeah.
and I miss him.
Yeah.
I found out when I found out he's buying tires, I thanked him as much as I could.
Sure. Yeah.
But he didn't want me to know, and he didn't want no recognition.
Yeah.
He just wanted to do it.
He wanted to watch that car that he enjoyed racing and that guy succeed.
He said, you just put on a hell of a show, and I just come to watch it.
Well, that's great.
So, yeah. So I left, and the fairgrounds closed down.
Okay.
Actually, in '94, I started in. Let me backtrack just a little bit. In '93, I wrecked my car pretty good, and I needed some roll cage put back around the front of it. I knocked the bars off of it. I went under somebody, and so I went down to RPM, and I met Buster Carden, and I asked him if he could fix the roll cage around the front of my car.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sure, bring it to me. So I carried it down there, and Gary Nix was hipping Buster at the time. And Gary said, there's been a lot of people here to look at that car. I said, well, there ain't a whole lot to look at, I don't think. Of course, I really didn't know enough about racing still. Wesson had built that car, and there could have been some tricks, I don't know. But if they were, I didn't know about them.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But so Buster fixed it, and or RPM fixed it, and I become friends with Buster. So I started going down there. I'd go by it every day, and so I'd stop in. And what long? Well, I was going to lunch with them. Then I was hanging out, and I got off work in the evenings. I'd go help Buster. He's always building cars and staying late, and I'd try to help him and learn.
But Buster, at this time, when he was working on your car, he did advise you that I can make this car faster at that point, correct?
He fixed it.
Yeah.
And he said, you got your shocks mounted wrong.
Mm.
And I said, well, what am I doing wrong? And so he helped me.
Yeah.
And he made it faster.
Yeah.
And he said, there's a lot more there. He said, but right now I'm going to leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished out that year, and we started '94. I had the street stock, and we won 3 or 4 races at the fairgrounds. And so I'd come up with an old late model car, and I really couldn't fit in it. I was a big guy. I was a lot bigger than I am now. Still big, but I was really big then. And so Buster tried to work on it. And I think he had to run a stock snout, and he was trying to put a snout on it. It just wasn't working out.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm just going to build a new frame. And I said, well, no, we're not. Those new frames cost a lot of money. And he said, well, just shut up. And he just goes over there and matter of factly just picks up some tubing and says, cut this here and here and here. And I'd been around a little bit. I'd been hipping a little bit. So we put a car on a jig, and we built a new late model car.
Wow.
And I bought some parts and pieces, and I used a lot of used pieces because I just didn't have the resources to build a car like that.
Right.
And so we built it, carried it to the fairgrounds. Back then they run heat races or qualifying races, where you finished in the heat race where you started the feature.
And this is considered a late model?
This is a late model car.
All right.
But everybody had to run a 500 2-barrel.
Okay.
So I pulled the engine out of my street stock and put a 500 2-barrel on it and put it in that late model, wet some, the whole 9 yards. And I won the qualifying race first night out, and I finished 3rd in the feature. And so I was real happy, but the car was so good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the car would, looking back, it was a great race car.
Right.
And so I raced it 3 or 4 times, and I wrecked it really hard at Sayre in a Southern All-Star race. I hit the wall head on, and it hit so hard that it didn't bust the radiator but knocked the fuel cell out.
Golly.
I asked Buster, I said, how in the hell do you knock the fuel cell out? Hitting the nose.
Yeah.
He said the fuel sloshed in it.
Okay.
So it knocked all the interior sheet metal out. It just destroyed that car.
Wow.
I said it was destroyed. He puts it up on the jig, and he carries it to Bobby Peoples.
Yep.
And Bobby puts it up on a frame machine and he pulls it and it's grunting and somehow he gets it back straight and square. And so he had to pull it to get it good enough to put a snout on. It was hit so hard. So I fixed the car, went back to the fairgrounds, and I run a race or two and run decent with it. But about that time, this was 90, I guess 95, 94, I guess. Anyway, I'm getting married. I'm going to get married. So we're going to buy a house. So I sold the late model car for a down payment on a house.
Wow.
And so Beth and I found us a house, and what wasn't a fancy house, but it was a house.
Right.
And so we acquired that, and we got married. And then a year later, Charlie comes along.
Yeah.
And, you know, racing is sort of on the back burner now. I got a family. I got a mortgage.
Yeah. You're committed.
But I still love racing.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'm going to pull it off or what I'm going to do, but I'm out there. So I've still got no car. And I raced a little bit. And I think the fairgrounds closed down.
Okay.
And so
what kind of car you got left? A Sportsman or?
Well, I sold the late model, and after I got the house going and all that, I think I built a new street stock.
Okay. All right.
And then as soon as I got it built and got up and running, the fairgrounds closed.
Okay.
And I said, man, you know, what am I going to do now? So they had the open wheel modified class at Sayre. And it was real race cars and it was fast. And I said, well, I think I might need to get one of those. So I bought one. And I paid $4,000 for it, race ready.
Wow. And
first night out, we finished second. The next night, we won with it. And we raced that car for a little while. And then a man asked me to drive a truck in the Parts Truck Pro Series. And so I went and started driving it. And he carried me to a lot of racetracks I would have never got to see had I not have been in that truck. We went to Lakeland, Florida. We went to Concord, North Carolina, and everywhere in between. South Carolina, went to a lot of different racetracks. And had some success. We wasn't great, but we ran pretty good. And that was a great series, and management killed that off. I actually blame that on Hoosier Tires.
Is that right?
They were giving some people tires that we had to run an F53, and they had F35s marked as 53s from the factory. Later on, everybody sort of figured that out. But if you wasn't one of those teams that got those tires,
disadvantage,
then you may as well have stayed at home.
Right.
And it killed that series. When people found out that was going on and that they were letting it go on,
right,
it went away.
Yeah.
So the Southern All-Stars picked the trucks up. And I said, well, this is okay. You know, BJ's got his hand in it. It's going to be all right. And it was a impound race. You had to buy the tires at the racetrack. And so I raced and it didn't last too long. They had about, I don't know, I forget how many races, but I ran 8 of them.
Okay.
And I won half of them. And they had a race, the Snowball Derby in 2001. The Saturday night show was the flake and the truck race. Okay. And I won that truck race at the Snowball.
Wow.
And it's sort of funny, the year before, I'd gotten thrown out the Snowball. They actually stopped the Snowball Derby to put me out. And they were throwing around words like attempted murder.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But it really wasn't. I had a guy come out and he threw his helmet in my windshield. So I stopped on the front straightaway. There was a guy standing there, and I said, hey, the guy threw his helmet at me, and he said, so? I said, okay, I'll fix it. Not a problem. Yeah. They didn't really know my temperament.
Right. Yeah.
So I drive around, and he's picked the helmet up. He comes running back toward my car.
Yeah.
So I just turned toward him and floored it.
Oh.
He goes running and dives over the wall. And I really wasn't trying to hit him. I just wasn't going to tolerate this.
That's right.
And so they black flagged me and parked me. And so they come over there and they said, you got to leave. And I mean, you've been at the snowball. You can't get out of the play.
Right.
Well, guess what? You can if you have to. They make me load
if
my
they're
stuff.
encouraging you.
They finished that race. And then they put my car, my car was loaded, and they told me, you got to go. And so they stopped the snowball.
Wow.
And they had the snowflake cars lined up on the front straightaway, and I back out of there, and I got to leave. And the state trooper follows me to the state line.
No kidding.
And so they told me, don't come back. But I was back the next year and won that race. So they didn't mean it.
No, they were just trying to get you in a safe spot.
Yeah, maybe so.
Or him in a safe spot.
Well, there was a lot more of them than there was me. But Roger Belter was there with me.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I felt like they'd need 100 people to come over there to.
No doubt. No doubt.
If they wanted to fight, they was coming to the wrong trailer.
Yeah, no doubt. With Roger in the house, that was that would deter a lot of them before they even got there.
Yeah, Roger's helped me for years. When I won that truck race, he called me that morning. He said, you going to the Derby? I said, yeah. I said, I'm taking this truck. And he said, well, I'm going to ride down there. And he said, is it a 6-tire race? I said, yeah. He said, you going to pit? I said, I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm not sure. So we turned out, he come down there to help me pit my truck in case we had a pit stop. And we did. And he pitted it because I didn't have any help. I had a kid that worked for me at my business that wanted to go, and Patrick Wallace. Uh-huh. And Patrick was a kid that lived down the street, and he had never been to the races before he went with me, and he was about 15 years old. And he helped me for years. One of my best friends in the world. He's a grown man with kids now, but back then he was a kid. And that's all I had with me. So Roger pitted me, and he got the tires on the truck, and we come back out. We started like 26th or something like that with about 20 laps to go, and somehow we led one lap. We led the last lap. I didn't touch a soul. I didn't hit nobody. I just we had 2 new tires, and tires are king at Pensacola.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But if hadn't have took tires, we'd have lost.
Yeah.
We didn't have a chance without them.
Yeah.
But
so you have a lot of history at the Snowball Derby.
I went for 30 straight years.
Wow.
And I've been in some bad wrecks at Pensacola. Of course, everybody knows about the 18 deal, but I've been in some bad wrecks way before that.
Tell us about the wreck in 2018. Tell us how that transpired and what took place after the fact.
I was driving Roger Belter's car, and
is it open wheel modified?
Yes, open wheel modified, and it was raining. It was literally raining, and we pitted. The trailing arm on the right rear had come loose, and it was going up and down in the chassis, and the car was just crazy. It would drive tight one lap and loose the next. And I kept telling them, I pitted 3 or 4 times that it took them that long to find the problem. Mm-hmm. So when they found the problem, they put it back and they tightened it down. I went back out. I was like, wow, we got a pretty good race car. Mm. So I'm passing cars. I mean, at a pretty good pace. Mm-hmm. Now I'm not going to win the race.
Right.
But I was about 6th or 7th when I spun.
Right.
But I got out of the groove about 2 inches. And, racing is a game of inches.
That's correct.
And when I got out of that groove and got in that water, it turned me. Mm-hmm. I just did a slow, long slide down the back straightaway and just stopped. And I pushed the clutch in. I was spinning the motor over to crank it. And I look up and there's a car coming. And I was like, oh, no, this can't be good. And he never let off. He never hit the brake. And he hit me right in the door. Driver's side door. And I thought the car was going on the roof. I remember looking down at the ground and it looked real close to me, but I was looking out the passenger side of it. And so it came back down on its tires and we got stopped. And the safety people went to him first. He was screaming. He was blind. Mm. It turned the brain in his head, and it stretched the retinas in his eyes, and it blinded him.
Wow.
And it broke his back. And so they go to him, so they come to me, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm sort of pushed up. My head's against the roof. the seat had sort of just squeezed together. It wasn't but about 8 or 9 inches wide at the bottom.
Yeah, that car came in what, a foot or more?
Oh, it moved the driver's tail about 18 inches.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, the whole tub went over and knocked the dry shaft out of the car. But as it was going, the left side of it gave up some. And it was built out of 120 wall DOM tubing. And that never moved. It had 11 gauge frame rails. That didn't move. But there was an oil tank inside the car. It was a
inline.
Yes, it was an AccuSump.
Okay.
Inside the driver's seat. And it went through the seat. That's really what hurt me.
Okay.
The AccuSump hurt me. If I hadn't had that, I might have had a broke foot or leg, but
right.
I wouldn't have had all the other problems. I can remember sitting in the car, and I would pick my leg up because it was burning, and I could see my bones in my leg moving my fire suit, but the other bottom part of my leg was laying there, and it wouldn't move. So I thought, well, I'll have them pick this up and get it off. And I said, no, I'll be out in a few minutes. So they called the fire truck over, and the jaws of life, and they're not strong enough to cut that thick DOM tubing. So now they call another fire truck, and I was there probably 30 minutes. And when they finally got my feet were trapped. If it wasn't for that, I could have gotten out. But it literally, my foot was between the clutch and the brake, and the clutch was behind the brake pedal.
Oh.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I never seen a car do that. But it crushed all that in.
Right.
So they get me extricated out of the car in a pass out. They got me picked up, and I tried to stand up. When I did, I didn't realize that my pelvis was broken off, and I didn't realize that I had a bone hanging out of my right leg. I knew my left leg was messed up. I knew my foot was broken, had to be, because when I looked down, it was probably 2 inches wide.
Wow.
It's just smashed flat. It broke all the ribs in my left side. Of course, my hip, my pelvis, all that was broken. Femur come through the skin on the front and the back of my leg. Bone sticking out of this leg, and I was burned pretty bad. That leg had laid on that AccuSump for 30 minutes, and it charred part of the muscle. I had to remove part of the muscle off the back of my leg, and of course skin grafts. And it was graphic, and it was hard.
Right.
They got me out. My friend Buddy Pitts. Now, Buddy and I were friends. Not great friends, but just friends.
Mm-hmm.
When I got hurt, he drove home and got his motorhome and carried it to the racetrack.
Really?
And he sat with me every night at the hospital. And my wife would go and sleep in the motorhome. And then she would get up and come to the hospital and sit with me in the day. And he would go to the motorhome and sleep.
Wow.
And they basically stayed with me in shifts until I was released and got to come back to Birmingham.
Wow. How long were you in the hospital in Pensacola?
To be honest, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. It was quite a while, though.
It was a little while.
Yeah.
I got home for Christmas.
Wow.
But they wanted to fly me home. Kristen Bonnet went out of the way. She was so great during that time. And she tried to get an airplane, but I had to lay down. I was too messed up to get in an airplane, to be honest.
Right.
I'd have had to be on the backboard, and it's just too much. So I got home, and my son got me unloaded. You know, he's a big old rascal.
Right.
He gets me in the house, and so for months and months, I'm there, and I'm getting better every day. I'm a little better, and I'm determined to get up. And so I guess about my friend Bruce Poston brought me a scooter to get to the doctor. And so I got up and I got on that scooter and I went to the doctor. And my wife and my daughter would get me loaded up and take me over there.
Wow.
And my daughter, she's pretty smart, outside the box smart sometimes, but common sense, well,
Yeah.
that's not her forte. So we go, and she gets embarrassed easily. It's raining outside, and so we get over there, and the scooter has been in the rain, and it's wet. And so I jokingly blew the horn,
and
it stuck.
Oh my!
It's got water in it.
Oh no!
So we drive across UAB, and the horn's blowing the whole time. and we see the doctor, the horn's still blowing.
Really?
We come out there, the horn's still blowing, and her face stayed red the entire time. When you're hurt like that, when you're down, when you're sick, something like that can change the mood or make things. It really does.
Yeah.
There's medicine in humor.
Yes, I agree with that.
And so when I'm down a little bit, or when I'm hurt, I remember that horn blowing in her face. It was hilarious. But yeah, I got better, and I had to go back in the hospital several times and have things done, have skin grafts done, and so about a couple of months, 3 months later, my late model car is sitting in the shop. It's sitting at Bobby Massey's.
Mm-hmm.
And I go over there, and I look at it, and I'm on a walker, and I walk up to it, and she's looking at me, and I know not.
This is Beth, correct?
Yeah, my wife. She's looking at me.
Yeah.
And she's mad.
Mm-hmm.
She knows I'm looking at that car.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets a phone call or something. She walks off. And so I tried to pick my foot up to see if I could.
Yeah.
Of course, I never got it up there, but it was all I could do. So I sort of pulled something. It'd been a long time since I'd picked my leg up. And I didn't say a word. And so she comes back. I walk out there. I get in the car. She puts the walker up. She said, "You hurt yourself, didn't you?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "You tried to get in that car." I said, No, I was just looking at it. She said, "No." I see your face. You hurt yourself. So she said, "I'm not going to tolerate that. You done killed yourself once and lived. You're not going to put up with it." I said, "Okay." So I went back. It rained the first. I told Bob, I said, "There's a 6-shot series, 6 races."
Okay.
I said,
that's between Huntsville and
Sayre.
Okay.
Yeah. There's 6 50-lap races.
And this is in the late model.
Yes.
Okay.
This is my late model. I'd won it the year before. I won the track championship at Sayre and Huntsville.
Okay.
And the 6-shot series championship the year before.
Okay.
And so I told him, I said, "I want to run those 6 races." And I told him that when I got home from the hospital, my goal was to run those 6 races. He said, "The comeback will be great."
Yeah.
And I said, "We'll see." So it rained the first one out. If it hadn't have, we couldn't have ever done anything. So
you needed that extra time, huh?
I did.
Yeah.
I was still on the walker when the first one rolled around, but I was on a cane, one of those 4-prong canes, and I could walk on it, and it would help me. And so we go to the racetrack, and Beth said, "I can't believe you're going to try to get in that car." And I said, "Well, I'm going to." She's mad. She's crying mad.
Right. That's serious there, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And so I get over there, and it takes them a few minutes to get me in the car, and I run a practice in it. I come in, and I don't get out. I can't. And I told Bobby, I said, "I don't like those shocks. Just change them." I just sat in the car. He changed 4 shocks. He said, "You're changing 4 shocks for qualifying." I said, "Well, we know where those are." So we went out and we qualified decent. And somebody threw a dice, and I think we were like second or third anyway. Put us on the pole.
Wow. And
so I got out of the car after qualifying, and I went over there and I took some Advil. I wouldn't take a pain pill. I don't believe in all that. So come time to race, and it's going to take me about 20 minutes. I know. I get over, I get in the car, get everything. Once again, she comes over and she said, "You are the most hard-headed, stupidest person I've ever met." I said, "Yeah, but I've got to do this.
Yeah.
I've got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Win, lose, or draw."
Right.
Because in my mind, I've already won.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here. I'm back.
That's right.
And we got lucky and we won the race.
Wow.
We had a good night.
Yeah.
And so Bob, we get out and I tell him, I said, we go across the scales first because if I get out, I can't get back in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I pulled up to the scales and they pushed me off the scales. And I didn't go across. And they said, "Look, we know you got to be close."
Mm-hmm.
So I got out and we got our picture made. And, and it was huge.
Big deal.
It really was. Of all the races I won, that was probably meant more to me than anything I've done.
Right.
That I've done.
Right.
Now, when Charlie won his first race, he was 10 years old. And that was an accident. I shouldn't say an accident, but it was unplanned.
Okay.
We had rented a racetrack. I carried the modified out and I tested it. And my friend Roger Wood had a car. And I don't know what class you'd call it, Renegade, I think. And he said, "Hey, can Charlie drive this car?" And I said, "Well, no, Charlie's 10 years old." He said, "Well, I'll ride with him." And I said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "There ain't nobody out here." So I put a helmet on him.
Yeah.
Of course, he's a big old kid. I mean,
right.
With 10 years old, he was 5'10", 180 pounds.
Right.
Big as a man.
Yes.
So he gets in the car and Roger gets Joseph Dodd. Joe's my crew chief. He's my guy.
Yeah.
Me and Joe have been around the world together. So anyway, he gets in the car and he rides with Charlie about 50 laps. I mean,
Roger does.
No.
Oh.
Joe.
Joe does. Okay.
Yeah, Roger's like me. He's old. He gets somebody young because he's sitting in the passenger side. There ain't no seat. There's nothing.
Wow.
Joe just sitting over there. And so he shows him the line and he shows him where to mash the gas, where to mash the brake and everything. And I said, "You be conservative." You know, so they get going about 50 miles an hour. Well, they come in and Charlie's smiling and he's so happy and he's had a great time. And so I go out and I run some practice laps. We change some things. And so Roger says, "Let him go out by himself." And I said, "I don't know about that." He said, "Well, we put radios in the car while you was out practicing. We've got radios in it. Now we can talk to him."
Yeah.
I said, I guess.
Okay.
So we let him go out there and we're talking to him and he's running the line and I tell him, "You're too high, you're too low. This is what you got to do." So I got him in the right line and he got a little faster. Well, a couple of weeks later, we load up, everything's good. A couple of weeks later, I've got two modifieds. So now I'm going to take the new car out.
Okay.
Now I'm going to test it, rent a racetrack. Roger calls me. "Hey, you got that racetrack rented? I'm going to bring this Renegade car out there." I said, "Oh, Lord." He said, "I done told Charlie he could drive it."
Uh-huh.
Well, now Charlie knows.
That's
so
right.
if he don't get to drive, it's going to be my fault.
That's right. He's going to be upset with you.
So what do? So he goes out there and he drives it and he gets pretty fast. And Joy Sims was doing the racetrack at that time, him and Ray. Joey says, "Hey, he's pretty fast."
Mm-hmm.
So we let him run probably 100 laps.
Wow.
Then every time they had an open practice out there, Roger would bring the car, Charlie would drive it.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, I just told Roger, I said, "I need to buy that car. If we're going to let him drive it like this, I need to put a good seat in it. I need to put a fire system in it. I need to put everything I can." So I put a LaJoy seat in a Renegade car.
Wow.
Well, I knew that it's my kid, you know.
Sure.
So I get him out there and Joy says, "Are you going to let him race?" And I said, No, I'm not. He's 10 years old. He has no business being out here.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I think it'd be good for the racetrack. I think it would give us some free promotion."
Mm-hmm.
I'll call Rick Carley or whoever and say, "Look, we got a 10-year-old going to start the feature.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I'll let him start, but he can't be around other cars. So they get ready to start the race, and I've got him a whole straightaway behind him. They got him on the radio. They start the feature, and he runs them down pretty quick. And so there's a car in front of him, and it was sort of erratic, and it was all over the racetrack. And so I told Charlie, I said, this next corner, I want you to go to the very bottom of the racetrack. I want you to pass him and go on and get away from him. I'm scared y'all going to wreck.
Mm-hmm.
So he did. Well, it wasn't long. He caught the next car, and then the next one, and then the next one. And so they had a caution. And now I'm worried. He's right in the middle of them.
Right.
And I said, oh, Lord, what do I do here? Do I let him race, or do I pull him off the racetrack, or put him back to the back? I wasn't sure what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, well, let him race. So we did.
Wow.
But I told him, I said, you be careful. Don't you hit nobody.
Yeah.
Because if you're in a wreck, it don't matter whose fault. It's going to be your fault.
That's right.
And I said, son, you don't understand it right now, but you ain't supposed to be out here.
Right.
And we can't do this to anybody that's racing. It's not fair.
Right.
So I had to reiterate that. He was mature for a 10-year-old kid, but he's still a 10-year-old kid.
Right.
But he goes around, long and short, he finishes about third in the feature.
Okay.
And so the next race they got out there, he starts up front. They said, you're going to let him start up front? And I thought, well, do I let him start up front and try to run away from him, or put him in the back and have to drive through them and take that chance? Hard decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
I let him start where he wanted to, or where he's supposed to.
Right.
And he won.
Wow.
So he won.
Second race out.
He won the feature.
Wow.
So he wound up winning several features.
Yeah.
Probably about half of them.
Yeah, he done really well. I was racing at that time.
And, I was really more concentrating on him.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I was working on the car, because I didn't know how to work on it.
Right.
It was a front wheel drive. That was the next thing, is they come out,
Wow.
and everybody had these big block cars and large cars. And this was a Acura Legend front wheel drive.
Wow.
And they said, he's got traction control. And I said, yeah.
Mm.
And 4-wheel anti-lock brakes. Because it come factory on it.
That's right. It's on
The
there.
radio still played.
Really?
And but it had all those electronics in it.
Uh-huh.
But it was about probably 500 pounds lighter.
Wow.
And it had, you drive it off into no man's land, to slam the brakes on, and it'd push your foot back up off the brake pedal and slam the accelerator down. It wouldn't spin.
Wow.
So it was just technology.
Right.
And once again, so technology wins. And so he finished that up, and then the next year we got him a 4-cylinder car. But it's been a lot of fun racing with my family.
Yes.
That's a family deal for me. If it wasn't, I'd quit.
Well, there's no doubt that every time I've spoken to you at any point in time, it's always been about your family in the end, and you're a great family man, and it shows. But tell us a little more about what that means to you.
Well, when you're hurt,
yeah,
when you lay in there, you look around at the hospital and you see who's there.
Right.
You might have 1,000 friends on Facebook or
right.
me, and it don't matter.
Right.
But when the chips are down and you see who your friends are.
Right.
And I've got a few of them. Mm-hmm. And I had people drive 5 hours to see me in the hospital.
Wow.
My friend Tim Waits and Gina and Ty Roberts, Tom Pump, they all drove down. My friend Jamie Lutz, they all drove down to see me. Of course, Buddy was there every night.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm missing some people, but I was so high on pain pills, and I had a morphine drip. My family trying to kill me, because when it come time for them, they mashed the button for me. And there were times I was laid in a hospital bed, and I looked over at Buddy and I said, do you see those bears skating in that gravy out there? There was a helicopter pad outside my room.
Uh-huh.
And I could have sworn I seen bears ice skating in that gravy.
Really?
And so Buddy told Beth, he said, we might want to slow down on that button a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
But I laid from Sunday till Thursday with my pelvis ripped off my body.
Wow.
When I got to the hospital, the doctor, he come in, he said, Mr. Melvin, you hurt bad. Mm. I said, yeah, I'm hurting real bad. I didn't know. I thought he was saying, are you hurting?
That's right.
He was telling me I'm hurt.
He knew, yeah.
But I said, I need some Narcan. Mm. And he looked at me and said, excuse me. I said, I need some Narcan. He said, I don't think so. He said, but I'm going to get you some fentanyl.
Yeah.
And I remember that part because when he gave me, and it was just, you couldn't even see it in the needle, but when he gave it to me, everything got a lot easier.
Yeah, that's right.
I was really struggling. And he said, I'm trying to save your life.
Right.
He said, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. He said, you're in bad trouble.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm saved. You just do the best you can, what you got.
That's right. Yeah.
I know where I'm going.
That's right.
And so I remember waking up in surgery, and the anesthesiologist, I guess, what you call them, he come in, or he was standing there, and he said, I've given him the maximum amount of maximum dosage that I can give him to get his blood pressure up. And so the doctor said, well, we got to stop surgery. We're going to lose him.
Wow.
And so that ended that surgery and he had put a rod in my leg, fixed this leg and my foot, whatever. I'm not sure what all they did, but I do know that I was upset about my pelvis because that was where I was really struggling.
Right.
And it literally just broke it completely off. The only thing holding it was the muscles and whatever. Wow. And so I was thinking, well, maybe tomorrow you can fix this. He said, it'll be Thursday. I'm not back here till Thursday. And he said, but I've got to call in somebody else. It'll probably take 10, 12 hours to get that back. I don't know how long I was in surgery.
Right. A long time.
But, and I'm going to screw. It's amazing technology. Yeah. It really is. He told me that I would probably be in a jig, just laying flat on my back for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Trying to but he fixed it where I wasn't. And that was a good thing. I got to come home out of the hospital much, much faster.
Yeah.
And even though I had to go back to the hospital a lot to get debridement of the burns and of course later on surgery and skin grafts and all that, it made it easier to be at home.
Right. Yeah.
I told the doctor, I said, I need to get home. I'm 5 hours from home. Mm-hmm. I don't care how you get me there. You get a damn horse and buggy. You get me a helicopter. You get whatever you got to do. Mm-hmm. I've got to get home. I've got to get to Birmingham.
Yeah.
We can't keep doing this. And I'm fortunate. My business kept running. I've got great people. I've got a guy that's been with me for 25 years. Wow. He's a full-blooded Seminole Indian named Barney. And if there's ever trouble, you better get him on your side.
That's right.
But he had my back, and him and Joe Dodd. Joe's helping me, and they kept everything going. My son, Charlie, he sort of just grabbed the bull by the horns and
got involved.
And he become a man.
The biggest highlights in your racing career, what comes to your mind when we talk about the Billy Melvin highlights?
Winning the Derby.
Yep.
To me, that's the biggest race in the Southeast.
Right.
And I won the Neil Bonnet Memorial. I got lucky. I won it several times. Won a Rattler several times. But the Snowball, to me, is the hardest race there is to win.
Right.
And I think it's because Pensacola may be the hardest racetrack to get around.
Yeah.
It has no traction. And it's a tough place to race.
Especially with the way you go in a little higher and later apex that corner. It takes some, you have to change your driving style a lot to start making that happen. Is that the same way in a modified?
It's the same, and it's the same at every racetrack.
Yeah.
You know, I call it making a big circle.
That's right.
You can't turn in too soon. If you turn in too soon, that apex, then you have to turn the steering wheel twice.
That's right. Yeah.
If you do that, you lose.
Yeah, that's great.
I don't care what racetrack you're at.
Right.
But for whatever reason, you feel like you leave that bottom lane open getting into 3 down there, and it gives you an uneasy feeling that somebody's going to get in your quarter panel and really do havoc.
Yeah, I agree.
And it happens often.
It does. Yes, it does.
And so that's the uneasy feeling about it. But I love that place.
Yeah.
And I love the fairgrounds. I hate we've lost it.
Yeah, I did too. That driving into turn 1 and 2 was so different than any other racetrack. It was really unique.
You know, my bucket list would be to go and race at the Madhouse.
Yes.
Around that little football field. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
Just something to do.
And they get 16,000 people in there every week. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but it's action-packed.
It is. No doubt about it.
You know, it's crazy that you'd win a race at the fairgrounds. You can shoot a shotgun up in the stands and not hit a soul and go to Sayre, and the place is packed out every Saturday.
Yeah. Just talk about what Beth has meant to you in your life and with raising your children. What is that relationship meant to you, and how much better is it than you could have ever expected?
Well, that's a lucky woman, really.
Yeah, I understand. I thought the same thing.
But I've put up with her since 1985.
Yeah.
And I guess I'll put up with her until I'm dead.
Yeah.
She ain't going nowhere. And she keeps our family together. She's the glue that holds it together.
Well, when you get life and you get a helpmate, I call it, in your life that helps you through life, you know, not everybody gets blessed that way.
She's a hard worker.
Mm-hmm.
She's helped me achieve everything I've achieved, business, racing. Right. It don't matter what it is.
Yeah.
She's been there, and she's helped me through all of it. If she hadn't been there, I wouldn't have accomplished nothing compared to what I've done. And not that I've done a lot, but it wouldn't have been near as much without her.
Yeah. You got both of your children involved in racing. They enjoy that experience with you guys, I know. Yeah.
You know, they grew up at the racetrack, and my son started racing at a very young age. Then he quit for a little while. Then he went back for a little while. And now he's racing again, but my daughter wants to race.
Yeah.
And I don't know how well that's going to go over. I might have to call you to come get me out of jail or something. But
that's it.
But I love the camaraderie with my crew.
Yeah.
And I always have. That's sort of what's kept me around racing as much. I've quit 10 times.
Right.
I had quit, and Jimmy Massey helped me so much. He taught me how to work on a race car.
Mm-hmm.
My biggest problem that I had is I wasn't a mechanic, and I didn't know how to work on things. And a great example is Jimmy would say, clean that valve cover up. And I'd go over and I'd clean it up, and he'd say, now put it in that sink and wash it. And I'd put dishwashing detergent in it, and I'd wash it up. I'd hand it to him, and he'd say, now will you drink out of it? And if the answer was no,
go back.
Then you go back.
Wow.
Well, see, I thought, well, something's clean enough, or it's close enough, or good enough. But it can't be.
Right.
Racing, you got to have everything perfect.
Yeah.
And so Jimmy Wesson taught me to race.
Yeah.
He taught me all the ins and outs of racing, the basics of what the fundamentals of racing. I don't care what division or what league.
Yeah.
Jimmy Massey taught me how to work on a race car. He taught me how to be a mechanic, what it took to be a mechanic,
and what to look for and to do.
And Buster Carden taught me how to go fast.
Yeah.
He's probably the best I ever seen with a stock frame race car. I know he's the best I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And he still makes cars go today.
Yeah.
And he's an amazing person.
What does it mean for you to be inducted in the same year as Buster?
You know, to be honest with you, I didn't put my name in the hat. My kids did. There are more people who are more deserving to be in this place than me. Jimmy Weston especially. You know, there's a million people, but I'm honored. There's a few achievements in a man's lifetime that you look back and that you'll be proud of.
Right.
They put you in the ground, and you know, your kids and being married or whatever. But this will go down as probably the greatest achievement that I've had to this point.
Yeah.
And I don't see nothing topping this other than I've raised good kids.
You have done that. Tell us about the ones that you really would like to thank for helping you through your career.
You know, I've had so many people that's helped me. I could never name them all.
Right.
There's just no way. But Tom and Andy Denicky went out of their way, and Joe Dodd. I carried Joe all over the Southeast, and I love him. He's like a brother to me, and he's helped me more than anybody would ever know.
Yeah.
Roger Wood, Larry Rice, Fish, Tim Waits, they've all donated a lot of time. And if they hadn't, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with in anything, whether it be life or sports. And I've surrounded myself with some really good people. Now I got Shane Sanders. He goes with me a lot, and he's learning, but he's great help.
Yeah.
Of course, my friend Buddy Pitts, he helps me to this day. He and I are like brothers. When you go through something like that, and you go to such extremes, you grow close with people.
Right.
Especially people that help you get to the other side of it. In racing, Bruce Poston has helped me for years. Poston's overhead doors. I remember meeting him when I first started racing. He's been there ever since. We're just friends. So it turned out we lived not too far away, and he's always helped me.
He has, and Bruce is another one of those guys that's helped so many people through the years.
Yeah, he has. And Rocky Rogers.
Yes.
Rocky Rogers has been so good to me, and he's still good to me. I could never repay him for all the help he's given us. And Gary Nix has built my cars for 30 years.
Yeah.
Albert Moore has built my engines for 30 years. And I'm not going to say that Gary builds the best race car in the world, and I won't say Albert builds the best engine in the world, but that combination has been really good for me.
Yeah.
I put them against anybody in the country, and I have.
Yes, you have.
And of course, you know, Buster. What can I say about Buster? Lord have mercy. Mm. He's my friend.
Yes.
He taught me to race. He taught me to go fast.
Yeah, and we're talking about Buster Carden.
Buster Carden.
That's right.
And Jimmy Wesson, of course, Jimmy Massey, and now Bobby Massey. Bobby Massey and I raced together the last 10 years, and we've always been family.
Right.
Ever since I was a little boy, he's been in my life.
Yeah.
When I was old enough to remember who people was, he was one of them.
Bobby Massey was one of them.
One of them. He was at my house every day.
Yeah.
He had, my dad would work on an old car, and just, he was always there.
Yeah.
And so I was through racing, and he acquired an old late model car, and he called me and said, "Would you drive that car? I'm struggling. I need somebody to help me figure it out." And he got me back in it.
Wow.
I ought to beat him up for it now. But he's family. He's always been family. But you know, those crew guys that I mentioned, along with a bunch of they're family too.
Yeah.
You've got people in your life that's helped you get to where you got to.
Yes.
In racing and in business, that's family.
I owe them. Like you said, you can't repay the debt. All you can do is say thank you.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's no way you can buy that time.
No.
And time is the most precious commodity that a person has.
That's right.
And when you get at the end of it, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
You realize that clock, when it's about to expire, time is all that matters.
Yeah,
really.
that's true.
But yeah, I'm fortunate to be here. Like I said, my wife has stuck through me. She's stuck with me through all of it. And there's times that she's been so mad at me when Charlie raced.
Yeah.
The first time I looked over and she had a Crown and Coke and a cigarette. I never seen her drink or smoke. I said, "What are you doing?" And she looked me dead in the eyes. She was so serious. She said, "If you hurt my baby, I'm going to kill you." And she meant it. Yeah. Brother, she would have killed me right there on the spot.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I was thinking, Lord, don't let him hit nothing. If he gets a fender bender, even if he's okay, I'm dead before we get the wrecker out there.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
But she tolerates a lot. and she puts up with a lot.
Yeah.
And now I got both of them racing.
Yeah.
Of course, Bob and I still have a car.
Yeah.
And we race it some.
Mm-hmm.
And next year, I'm going to let Brooke run the old modified car, and I've had a lot of success with it. I bet I've won at least 100 races in that car.
Wow. You're going to put her in that car?
And I put her in that car.
Well, that's going to be a neat thing.
I think it would be neat to have her in the car that I've done so much with. She looked at me and she said, "It's a lot of expectation." I said, "Baby, you ain't got no expectation. You go out there and have fun. That's all it's about."
That's right.
So we're going to do that. We're going to continue to race as long as they want to race.
Yeah.
We're going to race because every Saturday night I can look across the pits and see my adult children.
Yep.
And I know where they're at.
Yep.
And that means the world. The COVID deal took me out.
Right.
And it gave me a whole new perspective on life.
Yes.
And I do realize I thought I was almost bulletproof till that wreck, and that set me back. But the COVID deal really set me back.
Yeah.
And now I know that the hourglass runs down in a hurry. The older I get, the faster time goes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much longer we'll be able to do it. And I don't know if they'll continue to do it after I can't.
Right.
But I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can.
Yeah. Well, you've done a great job. You've had a great career. You know, that's the reason that you're being honored this weekend with this great honor is because of the way you raced and the heart that you have for racing. And people understand that about you. And they want you to be honored this weekend and have the privilege of being in the Hall of Fame. So I want to be the first to congratulate you and tell you thank you. I think it's well deserved, and you've done a great job, and you've been a great friend and a great racer to so many people.
I appreciate it. You know, I've given everything I had to racing.
Yes.
I literally have. I've spent all my money. I broke myself in two. I just don't have nothing left to give it, but my time. But I'm gonna keep doing it.
Well, good deal. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of it. And again, congratulations.
Thank you for your support.
Yes, sir.